Life was going smoothly in the small city of Wichita, Kansas, in the early 2000s. Wichita was a typical mid-sized American city, with a population of about 350,000. At the center of the events was a 27-year-old woman named Christine Wilson, who worked in a field that was controversial and condemned in a conservative Kansas society. Christine was an escort, providing services to wealthy clients. She led a double life. To neighbors and acquaintances, she was an ordinary young woman, working as an administrator at a local clinic, but secretly she met with clients, among whom, according to her, was a man of high social standing. This man, as it later turned out, was a priest of the local Catholic Church, Father Michael Rose. Their relationship, which lasted for several years, ended in tragedy, which forever changed the lives of many people in Wichita. It all started with a phone call to the police on the evening of October 12, 2003. The caller, who identified herself as Christine, reported finding a body in the priest's house. Her voice was shaky and she spoke incoherently, but she claimed she had nothing to do with the incident. When the police arrived, they found Father Michael in his home on the outskirts of town. The atmosphere in the house was calm, but evidence indicated that something serious had happened. Christine, who was at the scene, told the police that she was a regular visitor to the priest's house, but refused to elaborate on the details of their relationship. Her words were shocking. A priest respected by many in the town was involved with a woman whose profession was considered immoral. In the spring of 2001, Wichita, Kansas, was going about its business as usual. Surrounded by rolling fields, the city was known for its aircraft factories and conservative values. The population of about 350,000 was made up mostly of working-class families who attended church on Sundays. St. Francis Catholic Church, located in the center of town, was one of the most respected in the community. Its priest, 42-year-old Father Michael Rose, was considered a model of virtue. He held regular services, organized charity events, and counseled parishioners. His calm voice and ability to listen made him popular with locals. At the same time, 25-year-old Christine Wilson lived in Wichita. She rented a small apartment on the outskirts of town and worked as a receptionist at a local dental clinic. To her neighbors, Christine was a polite but reserved young woman. Her blonde hair, neat clothes, and modest demeanor did not arouse suspicion. However, Christine had another, hidden life. In the evenings, she worked as an escort, providing services to wealthy men. This work brought her income, allowing her to pay bills and save money for the future. Christine carefully concealed her profession, using a pseudonym and avoiding communication with clients outside of meetings. Their paths crossed in April 2001. Christine later told police that she first met Father Michael at a local restaurant where she sometimes met clients. The restaurant, a cozy place called the Olive Branch, was popular with businessmen and those looking for privacy. Father Michael, dressed in civilian clothes, was sitting at a table in the corner. According to Christine, he approached her and struck up a conversation. She did not know he was a priest and assumed he was just another customer. Michael introduced himself as a businessman working in the charity sector and suggested they meet later to discuss possible collaboration. Christine, accustomed to such offers, agreed. Their first meeting took place a few days later at a motel on the outskirts of Wichita. Christine found Michael to be reserved but generous. He paid more than she expected and asked to meet regularly. Christine agreed, unaware of who he really was. It was only months later, when she accidentally saw him on the news, that she learned that her client was a priest. This revelation shocked her, but she decided to continue the meetings, since Michael was a reliable client and she needed the money. In Wichita in 2001, such relationships were unthinkable for public discussion. Scandals involving the Catholic Church were beginning to make national headlines, but in Kansas, faith in the church remained steadfast. Christine and Michael kept their relationship secret. She used a separate phone to contact him, and he always chose meeting places far from the center of town. Their secret remained undiscovered, but over time, the situation began to get complicated. By the summer of 2001, Christine Wilson and Father Michael Rose had become regular. They met about once every 2 weeks, usually at motels on the outskirts of Wichita or at rental apartments that Michael rented through third parties. Christine later told police that Michael was extremely discreet. He never used his real name, introducing himself as James or Mike, and always paid in cash. They used disposable phones that Michael bought from various stores to communicate. Christine, accustomed to such precautions in her profession, did not mind. She was content that Michael was a generous client and that their meetings were uncomplicated. Father Michael led a double life. During the day, he was a priest at St. Francis, celebrating Mass, attending charity events, and meeting with parishioners. His reputation in Wichita remained impeccable. In 2001, the Catholic Church in the United States had already faced its first high-profile scandals involving priestly misconduct, but in Kansas, such stories seemed distant. Michael skillfully maintained the image of a virtuous churchman. He organized fundraisers for local schools, helped families in difficult situations, and even gave lectures on morality and family values. None of his parishioners could suspect that another side of his life was hidden behind this facade. Christine, meanwhile, continued to work as a receptionist at the dental clinic. Her co-workers described her as punctual and polite, but not given to personal conversations. She rarely shared details about herself, and no one knew about her second job. Christine kept encrypted records of her clients on a laptop she kept at home. In these records, Michael appeared as James K., and she noted the dates of their meetings and the amounts he paid. According to her, Michael paid her more than $20,000 over the 2 years of their relationship. The money allowed Christine to pay off her debts and start saving for a move to another state. Their relationship was not without tension. Christine said Michael sometimes talked about feeling guilty. He would mention that his actions were against his beliefs, but he could not stop. Christine, not being religious, did not attach any importance to this. She saw him as a client, not a priest, and tried to avoid personal topics. However, over time, Michael began to show more interest in her life. He asked about her past, her family, and her plans for the future. Christine was wary of this, but she continued to maintain contact, not wanting to lose her income. In 2002, things got more complicated. Kristen noticed that Michael was becoming more demanding. He wanted to see her more often and sometimes called her late at night. She began to suspect that he might not be as careful as he used to be. One day, she noticed that a car was following her as she was returning home from a meeting with Michael. This scared her, but she did not dare break off the relationship. Rumors spread quickly in Wichita, and Kristen was afraid that breaking up with Michael could lead to her profession being exposed. October 12, 2003, was a typical fall day in Wichita. The temperature was about 60 degrees, the sky was overcast, and residents were getting ready for the work week. Christine Wilson spent the morning in her apartment, sorting through paperwork and answering calls related to her job at a dental clinic. Around noon, she received a text from Michael Rose asking her to come to his house that evening. This was unusual. Their meetings usually took place in motels or rented apartments, but Christine agreed since Michael was a regular client. She marked the time on her calendar, 7 p.m., and began getting ready. Michael Rose's house was on a quiet street on the outskirts of Wichita. It was a one-story cottage with a manicured lawn and a low fence. Neighbors knew Michael as the priest at St. Francis Church and respected him for his friendly manner. He often greeted them while he was out for a morning jog and sometimes invited them in for tea. None of them noticed anything suspicious about his behavior. That evening, around 6:45 p.m., Kristen parked her car 2 blocks from Michael's house, as he had requested, and walked to his cottage. She wore a dark coat and jeans to avoid attracting attention. Christine entered the house through the back door as arranged. It was quiet inside, with only the living room lights on. She called out to Michael, but there was no answer. As she walked through the kitchen, she noticed a half-drunk cup of coffee on the table and a newspaper open to the local section. Christine walked into the living room and found Michael lying on the floor, motionless. Christine froze, realizing something serious had happened. She checked on him, but found no signs of life. In a panic, she ran out of the house and called the police from her phone outside. The Wichita Police Department received a call at 7:12 p.m. Christine identified herself and explained haltingly that she was at the priest's home and that he was not okay. The officer on duty sent a patrol car to the address. The first officers arrived on the scene 15 minutes later. They found Christine sitting on the sidewalk near the house. She appeared shaken, her hands were shaking. The officers entered the cottage and confirmed that Michael Rose was dead. At first glance, the house did not show signs of a struggle. The furniture was in place, the windows and doors were intact. However, there were stains on the floor of the living room, which forensics later identified as blood. Christine was taken to the station to give a statement. She said she had known Michael for about 2 years and met him regularly for personal business. She insisted she had nothing to do with the incident and had come to the house at his request. The police noted that her story sounded plausible, but it raised questions. Why did Michael invite her to his home instead of a motel? What happened in the house before she arrived? These questions became the starting point for the investigation. By the morning of October 13, 2003, Michael Rose's death had become a priority for Wichita police. Detectives assigned to the investigation began by examining the priest's home. Forensic scientists collected blood samples found on the living room floor and sent them for analysis. Fingerprints were also found on the back doorknob and a coffee cup in the kitchen. There were no signs of forced entry, indicating that Michael likely knew the man who was with him that evening. Police requested surveillance footage from the area, but in 2003, surveillance cameras were rare in residential areas of Wichita, and this lead yielded no results. Christine Wilson remained a key witness. When questioned, she gave a detailed account of her relationship with Michael, admitting that she worked as an escort and that he was her client. She claimed that she went to his house at his request on the evening of the incident and found him dead. Detectives checked her alibi. Her phone records showed that she had received a text from Michael at 12:03 p.m. and that she had called police at 7:12 p.m. However, her presence at the scene and the lack of other witnesses made her a potential suspect. Police seized her phone and laptop for analysis. The investigation was complicated by Michael Rose's reputation. He was known as a respected priest in Wichita, and news of his affair with an escort sent shock waves through the parish of St. Francis. Detectives interviewed Michael's co-workers and church members. No one noticed anything unusual about his behavior. However, one of the priest's assistants, 30-year-old David Clark, mentioned that in recent months Michael had seemed troubled and often retreated to his office. David also said that Michael had received anonymous letters but had not shared their contents. Police turned their attention to Michael's financial records. An analysis of his bank accounts revealed that he was regularly withdrawing large amounts of cash, between $500 and $1,000, without specifying the purpose. This was consistent with the amounts Christine said he had paid her. However, detectives noticed that over the past 3 months, the cash withdrawals had become more frequent and the amounts larger. This led police to believe that Michael might be involved in other financial obligations. They began to look into his connections outside the church. As the investigation progressed, a new suspect emerged: 35-year-old Robert Hayes, a local businessman who owns several auto repair shops. Michael's neighbors recalled seeing his car, a black pickup truck, parked near the rectory a few days before the incident. Hayes was questioned but claimed he did not know Michael personally and had not been in the area. Police requested access to his financial records and discovered that he had wired money to an account linked to one of the motels where Christine and Michael had met. This discovery complicated the picture, and detectives began to suspect that someone else might be involved. By early 2004, the investigation into Michael Rose's death had concluded. The trial began in March 2004 in Wichita County Court. Christine Wilson was named the prime suspect, but Robert Hayes was also charged. Prosecutors alleged that Hayes, having learned of Christine and Michael's affair, blackmailed the priest for money. When Michael refused to pay, Hayes allegedly fatally injured him. Christine was charged as an accessory, since she knew about the blackmail but did not report it to the police. At the trial, Christine testified in detail. She confirmed that Hayes was her client and that he had seen her with Michael at a motel one day. Hayes began threatening her, demanding that she reveal the priest's identity. Christine refused, but Hayes tracked down Michael and began sending him anonymous letters. Michael, according to Christine, was frightened and asked her to stop the meetings, but she convinced him to continue. Prosecutors used her laptop, where they found records of meetings and payments, as evidence of her involvement. Hayes denied all charges at the trial, claiming that he was not at Michael's house on the day of his death. Forensic analysis showed that the blood on the floor belonged to Michael, and Hayes' fingerprints were found on the doorknob. This became key evidence. In April 2004, Hayes was convicted of murder and sentenced to 25 years in prison. Christine received 2 years of probation for concealing information. The trial was widely covered by the media, causing controversy in Wichita. Many residents condemned Christine, while others blamed the church for covering up the priest's weaknesses. The case rocked the city. St. Francis lost a congregation, and the local community began to debate questions of morality and responsibility. Christine left Wichita after the trial, and her fate is unknown. Michael Rose's story became a reminder of how personal secrets can ruin lives and undermine trust in institutions.